President Muhammadu Buhari was in Imo State, southeast Nigeria, on a one-day working visit, during which he commissioned a number of projects already done by the state government. Among projects which Mr. President commissioned were the Balloon Technology Drainage Tunnel at Dick Tiger and Mokaiha Egbeada Bypass, the new government house, executive chambers, and the Naze Poly Nekede Road. However, Imo State residents did not come out en masse to welcome the president, despite pleas by the state government not to do so. Many say this action may not be unconnected with a purported sit-at-home order issued by the indigenous people of Biafra, a secessionist group in the region. Later on this program today, we'll have Femi Adesina, presidential spokesman, joining us to discuss the significance of the president's visit to Imo State, his second visit to the southeast region since he assumed office. And then, of course, Femi Adesina will also talk about other issues of topical interest. But before Femi Adesina joins us on the program, let me start with you, Professor Kila. What do you make of that visit? It's considered symbolic, historic, and a show of confidence by the president, considering the fact that the indigenous peoples of Biafra had, ordered people to sit at home, and they had said that the president was not welcome in their part of the country. But of course, the president was there in Imo State. He was well received by the state government. And after, Femi Adesina issued a statement outlining some of the statements made by the president. One, about how important, the Igbos are to the Nigerian Federation, and how Nigerian unity is incomplete without Igbos, who he says are masters of commerce and entrepreneurship. And he also gave his commitment to the people with regard to the second Niger Bridge, which he says will be completed. He talked also about security, his commitment to security, and his resolve to continue to fight corruption. Well, the governor was delighted. Many of the leaders of the Southeast were also very pleased, because he had a closed-door meeting with leaders of the Southeast, where he said they also have a lot to do to encourage the youths in the Southeast, to continue to support the idea of one Nigeria. What do you think, Professor Kila?
Well, I think it's a good thing. I'm a bit surprised, because I think most people should read the message of Femi Adesina, because there are too many people talking about Buhari's tailor on social media, about his sartorial presence, which I think is not fair to the importance of the message of the visit. I think there's nothing, it shouldn't be historical that the president of Nigeria goes to visit a part of Nigeria. I think it's a good thing. I think that because of the way the matter of the Southeast has been handled thus far, that is why we're bringing out something extraordinary out of an ordinary course of action. But I do hope that the president will have a chance to visit more parts of the country, to engage with the people and to view what the governors are doing, but also to see what the federal government, which is directly under him, are doing, and to lay stake to it. I think it's a good thing that he's going around to see these people, and it augurs well to revalue a significant part of Nigeria. Of course, I definitely agree that there can be no Nigeria as it is today without the Indigbo people. So it's good to acknowledge it, but it will be better to acknowledge it with facts and more than with words as well.
Well, Professor Akintanwa.
The visit may have some symbolic aspects, but I think that while people appreciate presidential visits, it's simply because such a visit provides an opportunity to patch the roads, to make amendments, to do many things, so that the visiting president will have the impression that there is development, that the governor is doing something concrete. In this case, the fundamental principle here is that Hope Uzodinma extended invitation to Mr. President to come to Imo State. And according to the president himself, he has invited him to come and see what he wants him to see.
Yeah.
That's what he said. So this time, Mr. President has only seen what Uzodinma really wants him to see. So when you begin to interpret this, what does it really mean, visiting a place? Under normal circumstance, a president of the Nigerian nation must be visiting every constitutive state of Nigeria, right? Whether or not the governor is from the opposition party. You are the president of the nation. And under no circumstance should you be glad to go and visit a state where you have support. That's the first problem. The second issue is that we have the government receiving Mr. President. The people's support cannot be said to be there. There's an expression of apathy, which means that, look, the government of Imo State and the people are operating on parallel lines, which we are told in mathematics do not always meet. And in this case, what type of unity are you talking about? What type of development? When the people do not have trust, when they are suspecting, and you cannot fault the position of the people because of the pronouncement of Mr. President himself on this same Indigbo. For instance, Mr. President has told us that without security, there's nothing that could be done. I do not share that particular philosophy.
Yeah, but, Prof, there's one thing. We cannot be sure that the people did not go out to see the president definitely because they don't like him or because they're afraid of IPOB or because they're busy people. Because think about it. I mean, you leave your job to go and meet the president. That's actually not a normal thing. So it could be one of the three things. We don't have hard facts to support that.
You cannot be more correct, Professor.
Yeah, you see, Prof.
You cannot be more correct.
All right,
because the people stayed back at home because there was a sit-at-home order by IPOB.
Yes.
So we cannot now jump to the conclusion that the people did not want to see the president.
No, you see.
Perhaps it would have been a different situation if there was no sit-at-home order from IPOB.
And there's no reason why I shouldn't share your viewpoint there.
Yes.
But look at the other side of the coin. Here in Africa, generally, Nigeria in particular, when you are having this type of presidential visits,
yes,
wouldn't you have the school children at the airport dancing, cultural dancing, doing all those things?
Which is a bad habit, but go
Hold
ahead.
on, whether it is bad or not, that's our tradition.
Yes.
That's what they have been doing. That is an evidence, a pointer to the fact that you are warmly received. But you see, the governor pleaded with the people
to come out.
To come out.
Yes,
but this time, the people refused to listen to the governor. Why should they listen to IPOB?
You're right. Well, why should they listen to IPOB? Because they're afraid.
Then why are they not afraid of the government? No, you see.
Because IPOB is more impactful than the presidency in that part of the country.
Can be meaningfully and constructively united. We must stop deceiving ourselves. We need to stop that. When I was talking about security, for instance, is Nigeria secure now? No. We are in a situation of insecurity.
Yes, that's
true. But is Mr. President not traveling to Imo State now?
Well,
even with the situation of insecurity. So you cannot argue, you cannot tell us intellectually that without security, there's nothing that could be done.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, that's a strong point. Yes,
so in this case, many things could be done if President Buhari wants to really do it.
Okay.
But you cannot have the mentality of saying a dot in a circle or be talking about contribution of 5% from Indigbo. And then you are talking about national unity. That's why people will want to follow IPOB.
Well, Professor Akintewa, Professor Kila, let me check whether Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director in office already with us. Yemi, are you with us? Okay, she hasn't joined us yet, but just before we take a break, one of the points raised by the president during his visit to Imo State was that, look, the people of the East, Indigbo generally, should mobilize people to ensure that they are committed to free and fair elections in 2023. Briefly, Professor Kila, we need to take a short break.
Well, I think that's what you should say across the country. There's no special case for the Indigbo about that. You know, the people minors voting are in Kano, not in Enugu or anywhere else. Free and fair elections, yes, welcome all over Nigeria.
Okay, on that note, we'll take a short break here on Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show. After the break, there will be more. Stay with us. Welcome back to Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me in the studio, I have Professor Bola Akintenwa, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Professor Anthony Kila, International Director of Studies at the European Center of Advanced and Professional Studies. And I'm still expecting Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Well, just before we move on, Prof. and Professor Kila, I would like you to respond to some of those issues raised by Dr. Chris Ngige with regard to the threat by Asuu to go on strike, and also with the threat by the resident doctors of Nigeria that Nigeria should just go and build more prisons because they are all ready to be locked up by the Nigerian government, except their demands are met. Let me start with you, Professor Akintenwa, a former Asuu member.
Well,
Always
you see,
member, yeah.
I can understand from the perspective of physiognomy why there will always be tension, misunderstanding between strikers, whether it's Asuu, whether it's resident doctors, or all others. There will always be, because if you look at it physiognomically, Dr. Chris Ngige appears to whoever is looking at him from the perspective of attitudinal arrogance. What do I mean? He's very forthright, his objective is marshalling his points, but he does so from an arrogant perspective. And that in itself cannot allow people to sit down and negotiate with him. For instance, he said that a strike is a strike, that there's nothing like a suspended strike. There's nothing like a warning strike. And when he was saying this, what came to my mind immediately is like in international diplomatic practice, where you will say an agreement is an agreement, where you will say an agreement is an agreement. It looks funny. I'm very happy that even though he trained as a medical doctor, he told us that he reads economics, politics, and all that. That's the beauty of it all. Please, an agreement is not an agreement. A strike is not and cannot be a strike. You cannot take the whole academic community for a ride and say that some doctors or Asuu people will not know, they cannot differentiate between their left and the right. If you are talking about pacta concordatum, which is the agreement normally done by the Catholics, you say it's the same thing as an MOU or a gentleman agreement. No. Then you must be taking us for a ride. It's not. And when we are talking about strike not being a strike, please, a strike, when you say warning strike or suspended strike, the fundamental difference between a suspended or a warning strike on the one hand and a real strike is that, look, a strike has a holistic character. In terms of duration, length of time, it may be indefinite. But when you say suspended or warning strike, it does not always have a long period. It tells you that, okay, look, this time we are drawing public attention to our grievances, why we have to go on strike, and so on and so forth. But for Dr. Ngige to be talking about strike being a strike, no, I think it's a misplacement. And then when you look at, for instance, he said he was for 5 years monitoring, he had training them, yeah, and their junior colleagues. I remember, in fact, that reminded me of what he was saying at the time, if I'm not wrong, in the National Assembly, when he was pointing to people that when he was in Lagos, he was this, he was that. And that, look, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. Look, please.
That is not the way.
As much as he's professionally very competent, and I like him the way he talks, please, we must remove the scintilla of braggadocio in his approach to matters. That's what is creating problems. What we are talking about is payment, not the technicalities.
Professor, let's bring Professor Anthony Kila.
I think first of all, one should give Dr. Ngige one thing. He's quite proactive and available to talk about these matters. He's not. He never hides behind protocols and unavailability. He, as he said, a lot of times, I think he's gone into matters that do not relate to him directly, out of the desire to solve problems. And therein finishes the credit to him. On the other side, we have a problem. There are three issues. One is the good side of his availability and his proactivity. Then there's another side in which clearly the man, Dr. Ngige, is frustrated because he seems to have done a lot and he's not getting results and he's not appreciated. And he's focusing on his efforts and how complicated the issue is. Brother Akintere is right when he says he's quite objective in his submission. But we have a problem here. Dr. Ngige is talking like a frustrated analyst. He's not speaking like a government official whose duty, whatever it takes, is to solve the problem so that hospitals can work and students can learn. He will say, what more can I do? My answer to him as a citizen is whatever it takes, even if it will kill you, Dr. Ngige. Now, let me add one other thing. Dr. Ngige looks better than his age. A lot of people should know that he's 69 plus, he's close to 70. He speaks in a paternalistic way, as if he's talking to these young people. What he doesn't know, that these people do not feel that way. They feel like professionals who have earned that MBBS, as you have earned it, doctor, if you're listening. And these are people who have earned their PhD and their professorship, and they expect to be respected by this society. They're scholars in their mind. So let me bring it back to him. Just as the way he's feeling, I'm a qualified doctor, well-read, doing my best in politics, these people feel I am a well-read, qualified person, not a beggar, doing my job, and I deserve respect. And if you will, doctor, we are your teachers. And let me add to it.
A good point to your submission is this. Dr. Ngige should know that as a reconciliator,
yes,
as a mediator, there's a meaning to that.
To that position.
A mediator must be acceptable to
both sides. Parties. And that's the point. As a negotiator, Dr. Ngige should know on one side, he needs to be calling both parties to follow what they've agreed. And on the other side, he needs to be patient with both parties. So when he talks about the process, they need to go from one step to the other. The difference between allowance and salary, the difference between temporary strike, suspended strike.
Yes,
doctor, in 2021, although Twitter has been banned, it's a Twitter age. Things has to be clear and short and concise. It doesn't matter all these differences. The important thing is somebody has worked for a month, 2 months, 3 months, and he should be paid, whatever you want to call it. And that is the way it needs to be filled. I think Dr. Ngige should be scored high on his proactivity. He should be scored high on his willingness to be available, but very low on his empathy.
Well, Professor Akintere and Professor Kila, I don't think that the resident doctors themselves could have done a better job. But Yemi Adamolekun
is one of them.
Yemi Adamolekun is not here with us. Yemi, we've had two very exciting, conversations. First with Dr. Ngige, And second, with Femi Adesina, presidential spokesman, on a number of issues. I would like you to respond to some of those issues. Maybe you start with Femi Adesina and then Dr. Ngige.
No.
Yeah, good evening, afternoon.
Yes.
Really, I mean, to be honest, it was really quite sad to listen to Femi Adesina and Dr. Ngige speak. I think Mr. Killer captures my sentiments towards Mr. Ngige. Yeah, he makes himself available, he speaks. But the posturing, the tone, as if, you know what, you people, if you like, go on strike. I really can't be bothered. I'll take you to industrial courts if you mention my name one more time. I don't know what's wrong with all of you. We had an agreement. We say we'll pay you money. We're giving you some of your money. If it's not enough, come back now. I'm not your employer. Ministry of Health is your employer. I really don't care. That's literally what Mr. Dr. Ngige just said on TV. And you look at it, this is within a context where the insecurity spectrum, or let me not say insecurity, the loss of life spectrum in Nigeria goes from people who are being killed in their homes, killed on their farms, being kidnapped from schools, to people who are dying because they don't have access to healthcare. Basic stuff that they don't need to be dying from, either because healthcare is unaffordable, it's inaccessible, or because you get to a hospital and you don't have doctors to take care of you. So within that background or within that context, you then have someone who is not only a medical doctor himself, but also in charge of labor. And you're taking two specific sectors of the economy, health and education. And your attitude is basically, you know what, do whatever you like, don't stress me. I'm not your employer. Go and meet your employer. And when you are done, then whatever. So yes, he's available for the conversations, but I almost wish he weren't, because I mean, just like Mr. President, sometimes the things they say grieve you more than the fact that you're upset to start with. Then they then open their mouths and say things, and you're like, why do you think this helps? Why do you think this adds to the conversation? Why do you think this moves us forward? Like if you're a arbitrator, as he repeated several times, then your job is to find a solution. Your job is to make sure that both parties understand the issues and come to a resolution so Nigerians stop dying and students can go to school. Again, to his credit, the point that his children attend Nigerian universities, it definitely to his credit, which is very much not the case for his colleagues or even people who are junior to him who work in the public service. But the fact that his posturing is not to solve it, one also thinks of in that context, your daughter is, in a sense, a victim of this. Yeah, she had lost only one semester. There are people who've lost 2 years, who've lost 3 years. How does this not, like, as a parent, as someone who actually can do something to ensure that under your tenure, you can leave that as a legacy of what you've done? So it really is quite unfortunate, and it was really quite sad. As again, I wear my biases quite proudly as a campus child. It was really quite sad to hear someone speak about the educational sector, and particularly tertiary education, in that manner. And again, my push to Asuu has always been, find a way to free yourselves. The federal government doesn't really care about education. As academics, if you guys really care about your institutions, fight for your independence. Raise your own money so that the government is actually giving students bursaries to afford your fees, rather than all this song and dance that we're doing. Mr. Ngige's attitude, regardless. And secondly, Femi Adesina, I mean, there's nothing Femi says that's any surprising. That's how he speaks. And I try not to listen to him, quite honestly, but I did listen a bit just so I could have something to talk about on this show. But otherwise, I wouldn't. I would have tuned it off. Because again, his attitude just grieves my spirit. And I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? I don't need to listen to you. I can't read his writings. I can't listen to him speak. But for this show, I did. And I'll two things that he said that was very interesting. For him to be saying that the president cannot come to an area of the country, it is never done. What do you mean it's never done? And then he said that, he was usually invited, as if it's some big grand thing that the president was invited, and to all of us, or it speaks to, I don't even know what, that he's claiming it's speaking to, that the president was invited. Should the president himself, given what is happening in the country, given the insecurity that's going on in different parts of the country, given the agitation for secession, does anybody need to tell him to go to the Southeast? As in, really, that needs to be an invitation. Like, nobody in your team can tell you that, this whole country that you fought for 30 months and you unified Nigeria and you did not take a day off. this would be a good time to show that you actually value parts of this country, given your other statements that you've made that got Twitter banned in the second. Anyway, but given all the things that you've done, is this not, as in, is it not just like it should be a thing that we discuss? And how do you go to other parts of the country to show that you are president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? Kaduna, where parents are crying over their children that have been abducted, Zamfara that's under lockdown. Is that not what you do as a president? But anyway. And then he said, very condescendingly, all their lives, they have been used to bad news. So when they see good news, all they can do is criticize. For the love of God, Femi Adesina, what is that? All their lives, they've been used to. Are we not in the same country together? When you were a journalist and writing, did you not write about the same bad news? So because NNPC is now saying they posted profits, which I saw an article where someone said in 2017, apparently there was some reference to some profits they posted, that Nigerians in a context where there's so much distrust, I mean, it's the lack of recognition of the fact that Nigerians have a 100% right to distrust the government that governs them because of the evidence before them. So not even recognizing that, or being very disdainful about the fact that Nigerians don't trust the fact that NNPC is posting a profit after 40 plus years by a minister that's not involved. Hello. And then lastly on Twitter, I mean, as you can see from my t-shirt, I'm wearing it with pride. Yeah, it's really very unfortunate. We've lost almost $600 million in that 100 days. People have lost opportunities. Even the government, in a sense, and I say this all the time, NCDC, did an excellent job using Twitter to inform Nigerians about COVID, and we've stopped that. Tomorrow, the organization I lead, MRA, Media Rights Agenda, Paradigm Initiative, and SERAP would have a press conference on this matter, especially because there are about 6 lawsuits on this matter, and we are also party to one of those lawsuits, because it just doesn't make any sense, really.
Thank you very much, Yemi Adamolekun. I think we'll move on. We'll take another topic of interest. Roughly 24 hours after the Lagos State House of Assembly transmitted a clean copy of the value-added tax bill to its office, Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu appended his signature to the document to make it a law. The bill tagged Bill for a law to impose and charge VAT on certain goods and services, passed through first and second readings on September 7 and was then handed to the House Committee on Finance for further action. This singular action of Governor Sanwo-Olu expanded the ongoing debate on the value-added tax in Nigeria, while some state governors clamor for a change in the law to enable them collect the VAT in their states. The federal government thinks otherwise. The matter is still in court. Well, yes, the matter is in court, and the Court of Appeal last Friday ruled that the status quo should be maintained pending the determination of the motion on notice. But in the meantime, Rivers State House of Assembly has passed the law. It did. Rivers State value-added tax number 4 of 2021, and Lagos State has also followed suit. Many other states say that they are studying the law or the judgment of the court in Rivers and the ruling of also the Court of Justice Stephen Palm, and also, I guess, maybe the process at the Court of Appeal. But some other states have said no, they are opposed to it because it's better to share. And one notable example in that regard is Kogi State. Meanwhile, the FIRS, the Federal Inland Revenue Service, has approached the National Assembly to claim that, item 58 on the exclusive legislative list should be amended, and another look should be taken at Section 161 of the 1999 Constitution. And then, of course, the debate is out there. FIRS workers are also concerned that if the states are allowed to collect VAT, it may amount to a cut in their salaries. But, there are persons who are saying this is about restructuring, this is about fiscal federalism, and a major breakthrough. Professor Kila, let me start with you.
Well, let me start with saying on the personal note, I agree with the states trying to get the VAT. Let me just state that bias, so full disclosure. On the other side, I want citizens to look at 2 things that is very crucial for the way we as citizens will relate to government and issues in this country. Number one is that expectedly and, logically but sadly, everybody is playing their expected role. The states that have to gain from the decentralization, as it were, of VAT are rushing to get the VAT. The federal government that is losing the fund is going against it. The states that think they have to lose are going against the VAT. Workers of the FIRS are defending the federal VAT. It just shows that people know their interest, which is not a bad thing in democracy. Everybody should know their interest, including anybody watching us now. Try to know what your interest is in this democracy. Not the ethnic, not the religious, not the vague political alliance. Try to see where your interest is and act that way. The second thing is that I'm happy that the Lagos State Assembly and the Lagos State government has been able to marshal this and put it into law within what? Less than 100 hours. The thing happened, they went there, they passed it. So it shows that when government is willing to do things, they can actually get it done. It shows that when they have a clear interest to get things done, it can happen. And I think the citizens should remember this kind of moment to keep holding the feet of the government by the fire. To know that, don't tell me it's a complicated thing, you can't get it done. If you want to, you can actually get it done the way you did VAT. I think what we're talking about here is, and here, unlike Femi Ademola, I look forward to listening to Femi Adesina because it's very therapeutic for a lot of things that I suffer from. So it's commonsensical and it's just there, I listen to him. I enjoy him a lot. I don't read him much, but I like listening to him very much. So Femi Adesina is right. This is a matter of fiscal federalism, and it should be tested. I think one of the things this issue has brought out is that for once in Nigeria, everybody is not pretending as if they don't need each other. Now it is clear that they're now saying it is good to share. When I say they, I mean other states. I don't do way against them. It means that it is now clear, because it appears everybody is strong, everybody is independent, everybody is sufficient, and anybody can go. This issue is now bringing out the fact that, the obvious fact to the table, that actually some people are more resourceful, have more resources than the other, and we should look for a way to do it. We're doing nothing new or radical in Nigeria. Once we decide to go forward on the path of fiscal federalism, two principles will come into play, which is on everywhere in the world. It is, on one side, the principle of subsidiarity and the principle of solidarity. And those things have clear guidelines. We can tweak them to meet our situation, but the key thing is, if we say we are one, either by union or by any kind of agreement, we must decide what we can do for ourselves, what we own for ourselves, then what we can cede to the federal government, or what we can donate for the benefit of those who have less. And it's not as bad as people think. Ayotariba, as an economist who makes a very beautiful point in one of his academic papers, demonstrates very clearly that it is not true that some states will die if they don't have resources from any other state. He argues, and I agree with him on that point, that everywhere there is land and there is people, that is resources, as long as you're there. All the states need to do is to understand that there is no Christmas tree from where goodies are falling from anymore. Everybody needs to roll up their sleeves and look inward to make things happen. And I want to assure people here that the moment we go for that kind of fiscal federalism, nobody will be left behind, because there'll be competitive advantages. I go back to economics here. What will happen is that some people will go and invest in states that charge less, where real estate is cheaper, where labor might be cheaper, where investment is cheaper to do, and you move away from the crowded city that is oversubscribed. So it's not as scary as people think, and I think it's a good way forward.
Well, Yemi, let me come to you quickly on the VAT war in Nigeria. War in quotes, but it looks like there is a looming war with regard to VAT. What are your thoughts?
I do agree with Mr. Killer. I think the point that it shows that we're all interconnected, even though, I mean, I dare say, let me rephrase that. In southern Nigeria, I think it's always been very clear that the northern part of the country benefits quite significantly for the economic activity in the southern part of the country. And that is anywhere from oil in the Niger Delta that now includes the fact that we're paying community derivation or whatever it's called through states where a pipe goes through you, to the fact that Lagos is the commercial capital of the country. Also, in the indices from maternal mortality, education indexes, if you remove 14 of Nigeria's 36, I think it's 14 of Nigeria's 36, 14 of the 19 northern states from Nigeria's GDP calculation, Nigeria's GDP goes up by $1,000. GDP per capita, my apologies, goes up by about $1,000. So the fact that the southern part of Nigeria benefits the country, let me put it that way, is never been in question. The part about what the northern part of the country contributes to Nigeria is always been debated for a lot of reasons. I mean, as someone was saying in one of my groups earlier today, that there was a point where some people were trying to make a claim that it was the groundnut pyramids that have been the highest contributor to Nigeria's development or something to that effect. At least data debunks that very clearly. However, Mr. Teriba's point that once you have land and you have human beings, human capital, when we talk about Nigeria, we talk about the fact that we have humans and we also have natural resources beneath the soil. And those are the two things that God has blessed us significantly with. Budget and the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission has done in different reports. The NIPC one is called the Book of States. Budget one is called the State of States, have looked at the different levels of viability for the states, Nigerian states, and what they have to sell or what is their unique competitive advantage that can increase their IGR. So these conversations have been ongoing. But why that is emotive is one, it's the undertone that has come with it. So you have the conversations around, for example, beer, and says, oh, if you are collecting money from people that drink beer or you are breaking bottles, then you shouldn't be collecting that. And then Mr. Killer reference, I think one of the doctors says, it's good to share. So don't deprive the rest of the country of these things. What the fundamental lesson and the debate about what VAT is, I mean, VAT is called value added, but in certain respects, it works as a sales tax. But you take out what you've imputed into it, deduct it from your output tax, and you remit the rest of it to government. So the calculation of it and the nuance around it can be sliced and diced either way. But the fundamental lesson that it's teaching all of us is that the way we share money, the way we make money, or we generate money to a national purse, in a sense, and the way we share that money is not equitable. And that's what is now on the table for it to be discussed. But the second leg of that argument, which ties into, for example, the NDDC forensic report, is not only that the sharing is not equitable, the spending of that shared money is then not accounted for. So we have a lot of problems that we need to look at. And for me, I'm excited about the conversation around VAT because it's not just about VAT as a tax, but it's unpacking how we work together as a people in terms of state relationships between states and relationships between the state and the federal government. So yes, federalism, fiscal federalism, as they like to call it, but also accountability. Because after all is said and done, part of the challenge we're having at the state level is that state governments are appropriating money meant for local governments. So that and the way that revenue is also shared is the 3 tiers of government as well. So again, local governments have an opportunity to be able to point at money that is technically due to them. So my hope in this conversation, beyond the larger conversation about northern and southern Nigeria, unity, federalism, secession, all of those, or devolution of powers, all of those other things, is that it's also allowing us as citizens to begin to have context to ask harder questions around how these monies are then being spent.
Well, Prof, maybe in a minute, if we can just comment so that we go to our last topics of the day, which should be 9/11 and the Taliban.
I will simply look at the political fiscal aspect of VAT. The issue is more political than economic. We've been focusing on the aspect of the economic aspect, the fiscal aspect. The beauty of it all is simply that the court ruling in favor of the states controlling, collecting the VAT has the potential to bring about a true, federal system. All that is required when you are talking about federalism is for the constitutive states in any given sovereign state, all right, to have control over the resources. Then you pay, the required taxes to the federal government. In a true federal system, the government is responsible for defense, foreign policy, currency, all those things. Not to the extent of coming to collection of for all this.
Yes. Okay, thank you. But let's just take our final topics of the day. As the United States marked the 20th anniversary of the September 11 multiple bombing, which killed about 3,000 people, the Islamist religious political movement and military organization in Afghanistan, the Taliban, raised their flag over the Afghan presidential palace, days after the Taliban formed a new government for the country. In the 2001 attack planned and executed by the Al-Qaeda terrorist organization from Afghanistan, the American government responded with actions, which included investigations, legislative changes, military action, and restoration projects. Yesterday, those who were killed were remembered and honored, even as the new government in Afghanistan continues to take roots. Well, the Taliban, they chose yesterday, September 11, as the day to raise their flag, and that flag was hoisted by Mullah Muhammad Hassan Akhund, a major follower of Mullah Muhammad Umar, who had served as foreign minister, who had also served as deputy leader of the Taliban. He's from Kandahar, and we're told that as foreign minister, he was a very temperamental person whose temper is ignited by a short fuse. He once threw a teapot at a UN negotiator. And that's the kind of man we have, but will he be able to actually provide a new government? The government is non-inclusive, it's all male, and there is even no diversity in terms of their extraction. They are all Taliban. You must have a link with the Taliban. But Professor Akintenwa, what is this linkage, between 9/11, which was a very sad day for the United States, and then the Afghanistan government announcing the arrival of a new government on the same day, 20th anniversary of 9/11?
The nexus is already well established by you. 9/11 at the level of the United States is to underscore the need to sustain, American values. And in this case, they remember all those who lost their lives. They set aside September 11 as the Patriots' Day. They also set aside every September 11 as a day that every American, either as national or citizen, must give 1 minute silence in memory of those who lost their lives. 9/11 is also a day set aside, for instance, as a day of national service, a day for rededication, recommitment to the promotion, protection of U.S. values. Then, when you now look at Afghanistan, in this case, the choice of the same September 11 to post their flags is telling you now that, look, you are remembering what we did in 2001, but we are telling you that we are still committed to that one. This is an expression of what I've always referred to as order and counter-order, meaning now that a friction is in the making. Now, two observations that are quite valid that we should not lose sight of is that you rightly pointed out already that, look, we don't even have women there. Fine. Minorities, not there. So it's a government of non-inclusiveness, first of all. But the fundamental problem at the international level is that the Prime Minister and 2 former deputy prime ministers were already on the sanctions list of the United Nations Security Council. They were there. And then records have shown that the current Taliban government is prioritizing the locally recruited staff of the United Nations office. I think that the future suggests that, look, this Taliban government is not likely to respect the agreement it has reached with the international community.
Well, Yemi, let me come to you. We have just about 5 minutes to go. Quickly, your take.
Yeah, I mean, but I completely agree with Professor Akintayewa. I think the signaling was very deliberate and also quite expected, I would say. So really nothing to add to that.
Well, Professor Kila.
But I think on a personal note, it actually shocked me. I was just thinking that 20 years ago was 2001. It's amazing because I remember very clearly, and it doesn't seem like 20 years ago to me because you know, not a lot has happened. Qualitative years, but not a lot has happened since then in one's life. But I think that there's something strange going on in Afghanistan. When the new Taliban people came into power, their posturing was as if to say, we're not where we were a long time ago. We understand that these are new times, therefore we promise to be inclusive. The first interviews they made, they were interviewed by women, and they were sort of gender sensitive. And they, not the rest of the world, used the term inclusive. They were going to be inclusive. It appears they're deviating from that, but I think we need to watch out for 2 things. On one side is what they're relying on. They're relying on the fact that China, Russia needs them, so sanctions will be tougher. Exactly. On the other side, they're relying on docility of the rest of the world to sanction them and to hold them to account. So we need to see how those things will play out. On one side, what they are relying on and the reaction of the rest of the world. And it is clear to say that besides what the Taliban government is known and accused for, they're now becoming also mischievous and deceitful. So they're not starting well, but let's see how it goes.
Well, I mean, what everyone should note is a statement by Mullah Akond, yes, that the forming of an interim government is a symbol of continuity. Yeah. And if he's talking about continuity of what? Because this is a departure from the government that fled, the government that was led by Ashraf Ghani, the government that was installed by the United States. Now, continuity of what? Continuity of terrorism, continuity of the drug war, yes, you know, or continuity of the suppression of women and large-scale humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, which the United Nations is already complaining about. But we'll keep watching and we'll see how this drama, this tension that Professor Akintayewa talks about between Afghanistan and the West, how it plays out. Well, thank you very much. You've been watching Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show, here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From my entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again next week.